Mike Montague at playfulhumans.com. And my guest this week is Linda Ugelow, and she is the author of Delight in the Limelight. This is how you can overcome your fear of being seen and realize your dreams. It's all about becoming a speaker, being able to tell your story, get on stage, have some fun. There's some very cool resources as well as a preparation ritual you can get for free. Go to lindaugelow.com/rituals for more information. All right. We're going to talk about how you can have more fun, flow, and fulfillment in your life. It's the Playful Humans Podcast. Here we go. All right, Linda, we like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by, wait for it, I forgot to memorize it. It looks like it is brought to you by the word short. The word short is the only word you can add 2 letters to it and make it shorter. Yeah. All right, here's the official joke of the week. Why do people in Greece hate waking up at dawn? Because dawn is tough on Greece. Okay. Do you have a joke?
I've got to tell you my joke.
Yeah.
Because my idea of housework is to sweep a room with a glance.
Oh, nice. I like that. Yeah, it's a lot easier. You burn less calories, though.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about speaking here a little bit, because I think there are some interesting things. You know, there's the old Jerry Seinfeld joke that people rank public speaking worse than death on their biggest fears. And I think a lot of people in what I call the soft skills stuff think that you're kind of born with it, that you're born to be a salesperson or a public speaker, or you're really great on stage, or that anything really that we learn to do is somehow inherent in us. And maybe people have some qualities or drives that does make that true for some people. But as somebody who now, the only compliment I reject when I come off stage is, you're a natural up there. I say, no, you didn't see the first 5,000 performances. They were not natural. And so I always reject that one and say it was a lot of hard work. And not innate talent or abilities. But what is your thought on people's fears of speaking and how they can develop a talent for it?
I'm with you that I feel like some people, I wouldn't say are born with it, but rather that they have been programmed to feel comfortable in it. They've received attention from others in a positive way that made them feel good about themselves speaking up. Whereas people like myself, somebody who was afraid of speaking for more than 5 decades of my life, was programmed to feel like there was something dangerous about it. And I had my own experience of when I became an online coach and I needed to put myself out there, and I felt very awkward on video. But my video mentor said, you got to get out on this new technology called Periscope. It's a live streaming app. It was the very first one.
Wow.
And all the marketing gurus said, you got to get out there daily to build your following. So I thought, here I am in my late 50s, and I'm late to the game, but I'm going to be an early adopter. And yes, it's terrifying. I felt like I was hyperventilating. My heart was racing. I felt like I was disembodied, like I was hovering above my own body. But I figured, with a few weeks of experience, I would get used to it. I tried all kinds of management techniques, power poses, affirmations, deep breathing, meditation, all that kind of stuff. And I managed my fear so I could go on every day. But Mike, after 75 days, I was about to press broadcast and I realized my heart was still racing. And I thought, why haven't I gotten more comfortable doing this? And I decided I was going to figure out what's behind the fear of speaking. Because I knew I was managing it, but I didn't want to manage it. I just didn't want it to be there. But what was it? I figured that I had to investigate it. So I closed my eyes and I said, if my fear could talk, what would it say? And what came back was, you're going to be attacked. And
Hmm.
immediately I had this childhood memory of mom putting me on the pedestal for the good girl I was, saying to my two older sisters, why can't you be more like Linda? And of course, they hated that. And as soon as her back was turned, they'd kick me in the shins, torture, tickle me, say, shut up, stupid. And all of a sudden, it was like, well, duh, of course I don't feel comfortable in the limelight because I learned that it was dangerous. And then
Yeah.
suddenly I thought, oh, maybe that's what this fear of speaking is about. Could it be? And I started to look at other things, times I was bullied in school, girls saying, nobody talked to Linda, which made me feel like no one likes me or is interested in me. It only lasted 4 days, but it had a long lasting impact. Or my father telling me that he wasn't interested in the things I was interested in, which really made me feel like people weren't interested in me, especially authority figures. So, I, it's not like there was one thing, but all these things kind of glommed together. And I found myself as an adult feeling like there was this monolith of fear in front of me.
Mm.
So once I realized that I had all this stuff, I realized, well, actually, I have a lot of tools to clear this away because I have a master's degree in expressive arts therapy. And I have a background in movement studies, movement dance therapy, and all kinds of improv. And I thought, I'm going to clear this stuff away. And so I did something called EFT, emotional freedom technique. Have you heard of that? Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
popular. Tapping, people know it by. And forgiveness, I forgave everyone I could think about. I forgave myself. That's most important. And you know what? After 5 days, my racing heart disappeared. And a
Mm.
week later, I remember getting on Periscope after a really hectic day, and I said, hey guys, I'm so grateful to you all because after running around all day, I can turn on the camera and just relax. And I thought, wow, relax in front of the camera? That's new. And then as I started to talk about this with just a couple of friends and colleagues, they said, oh, you know what? I have that anxiety. Do you think your process would help me? I said, I have no idea because it was my story and it's
Yeah.
my favorite techniques. I don't know if it will work for you, but it did. And it just kind of snowballed. Then that was just for camera. Then people started to ask me about getting on stage, and I was not a public speaker. I was, however, a performing artist. I'd been performing for 30 years with a women's world music group, afraid to introduce a song, but fine dancing or singing,
Yeah. What do you think the difference
Well,
was
it's
there?
the same kind of difference
Yeah.
that some people are afraid of speaking in person, but they're comfortable on camera, or vice versa. Or some people are comfortable
Mm.
speaking to their peers, but not to authority figures, or vice versa. And so it's kind of just how everyone has their own stories, their own places where they were made to feel great about themselves and comfortable, and other
I like that.
places where it doesn't. So it doesn't matter where it is. I knew the reason why I felt comfortable in dance is that was my home base. I was dancing since I could walk, and I was encouraged, but not overly so. So I felt like I had space to develop myself in it. And then when I was 18, I came across dance movement therapy, and that totally shifted my whole perspective of movement. So it became a process of learning about myself where I felt safe. It was a safe space to explore and reflect on our experiences. And also, in my master's degree, I focused on something called authentic movement, which was closing your eyes and following the impulses that your body had to move while you had a witness. So for 7 years, like
Hmm.
4 days a week, I was not just practicing this, I was teaching it, I was studying this, and I became so comfortable being witnessed. And to this day, like just this summer, I was at one of these summertime bands on the town lawn. And I
Yeah.
went to one, it was hundreds of people, great band. No one was up dancing. Nobody. I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to let that stop me. And I got up there, and I wasn't like a show off, but I moved into that
I know what you're
space and
saying.
I
Yeah.
was enjoying myself. And then at the very end, when they were introducing the band, they said, "And please give applause to this wonderful lady who danced her heart out for us." And so I feel like when I was with my group and we'd perform, let's say in Morocco or in India, and national TV would come out because it was unusual to have a group of women from the US. And I'd have 7 cameras on me while I had my eyes closed doing a trance dance, totally at ease, totally at ease. But as I said, I could not introduce a song without shaking in my boots.
Well, I think there is a whole lot to unpack there, and I want to ask you about all of it. So we'll have to go fast. But the first one is I like what you said about the different types of speaking, because I found this to be true in all the stuff that I've done, that I seem to be maybe the opposite. That the bigger the crowd, the more energy I get from it. I maybe get more nervous in one-on-one conversations where I feel like I only have one chance. I succeed or I fail with one person. If they don't like me, like, I'm hosed. If I got 10,000 people in the audience, I know most of them are going to like what I do. I've done this enough to know that I can win over a lot. Or even 10 people come up after me and say, "Oh, you were amazing." I don't have to hear from the other 9,990. They generally don't come up to say that was horrible. So I've always found more comfort in the larger audiences, and then small groups and video and stuff is very different for me too. But I had a lot of practice in radio and podcasting like this, and in bringing energy to a space with not a lot of audience. But I did have to practice that
Absolutely.
and learn it a lot. So I feel like that one's in the middle for me a little bit. But you mentioned something interesting there, because I was thinking back to sports. I think sports had a lot to do with it for me. I played a lot of team sports and a lot of public stuff with like an audience cheering and rooting for your team and stuff. And so I like that feeling. And I had very silly family that we liked performing and got a lot of positive feedback for, coming up with silly songs or sketches or stuff like that, and trying to make my parents and grandparents laugh. And I had that kind of reinforcement. So you may have already broken some of my stereotypes around this, because one of the things that I say, and this will take us to a question here. It's coming, Linda. My philosophy has always been like, do it scared. The first time I spoke in front of class in 5th grade, I remember I was squeezing my hands so tight. People said, hold your hands together so your hands don't shake and stuff. I was squeezing so hard, my fingers turned white. I forgot everything I was going to say. Complete total panic. I think the teacher just passed me and like skipped it, gave me a passing grade so I didn't have to do it again. But there was something that compelled me to keep doing it. But even after all these years, like 5,000 performances, I like it when my heart races a little bit at the beginning. It makes me go, "Oh, you know what? I'm here. I need to get in the flow. Like, this is a big deal. I'm excited about this." And I don't want to ever kind of feel like, "Oh, this is blah, no big deal. Like, I'm just, getting up on stage again. Nothing to see here." Like, I want it to be special. So I always kind of encourage people to do it scared. What are your thoughts on
I think it's a matter of the dose.
that? That's fair.
A
Sure.
little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of cortisol, I think can sharpen your mind, in fact,
Yeah.
but too much can spoil the sauce. So it's just like with cooking and salt, a little bit brings out the flavor, too much
Yeah.
ruins the dish. And when I first heard that idea of do it scared, in fact, when I was on Periscope, I was part of a group that had a hashtag do it scared. So I liked the idea, but the problem for me was that I know the difference between being scared and being excited.
Hmm.
It has a very, very different feeling. Excited for me is getting to see a friend for lunch or dinner, or cooking a special meal for a group of friends. And I'm not anxious about it, but I'm still having fun. I think that's the other myth, that if we don't have that adrenaline, it means it's blah. No, why is it blah? I mean, we can
Yeah.
still feel like there are other dimensions to peak experience. And in my book, the last chapter, chapter 14, is about peak experience. And we can put ourselves in a state of flow. We can put ourselves in a state of gratitude. Some of these higher feelings, or allowing ourselves to be a vehicle for something to come through us. And yes, as long as that little bit of adrenaline or cortisol that's there feels workable and that you're familiar and it doesn't freak you out, there's no problem. There's no problem. But it's not the only thing that's going on for us to have an incredible experience. And it doesn't even have to be, at the height for it to be something meaningful.
Yeah, I can relate a lot to that. I do think you helped me reframe that a little bit, because there are times where I have to ask myself and I go, "Ooh, I'm a little too worked up. This doesn't feel good. Am I not prepared? Do I not know the audience? Did somebody put too much pressure on me? Is there's something else getting in the way of me really being excited about it?" Because that does still happen too. I have bombed enough over the years to know that, like, when one is coming, my body will tell me and be like, "You do not know what you're doing here," or "You have been set up." I like a low bar. I don't know about you, but I want people to go on and be like, "Mike's never been on stage before. Please be very kind. Give him a lot of applause. He's a little shy."
You don't
And then
want
I'll
someone
come
to
out
say,
and blow
"He's
him
the
away.
funniest guy you've ever heard."
That's the worst.
That's the worst.
I just skipped a video I was going to do for a big virtual conference, because I was talking about how to be more relatable on podcasts. And they were like, "Why don't you just talk about how to be funny?" And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." I'm out. So they changed it at the last minute and I bailed because I'm like, that's too much. I'm not the humor guy. Somebody else can do that. Now, that brings us to another one here that I saw in your book that I suffer from, which is imposter syndrome and having anything to say. And I found that is a funny balance, that sometimes you feel like, man, I should be up there. These other people are not as good. And then other times you get asked to do the exact same thing and you're like, whoa, this room is way better than me. I just started an AI marketing company, and there are a lot of really great marketers out there. There's a lot of really smart nerds in AI and stuff. And when I'm only a month into the business, I can have a lot of imposter syndrome, but I've already gotten up to speak on it on a couple of times. And so I think I would love to hear your thoughts on this and how we can approach that imposter syndrome with maybe a realistic lens.
I think that there's a difference between being new at something and feeling like an imposter.
Mm,
When I think of imposter syndrome, I feel like it's relating to people who are already competent and perhaps already have expertise, and yet no matter what they do, they feel like they're a fraud and someone's going to find out. Like
yeah.
Maya Angelou, who after writing her 9th book, she said, "I still feel like people are going to think I'm a fraud." That's imposter syndrome. Being new, that's a different avenue to take. That's about like accepting that you're on a journey and you're at the beginning of it. So honor and accept and be excited for where you are and be excited for where you're going. I feel like of course, we're going to start off not being as good as we're going to be. I mean, just like you said, you've done how many thousands of,
Yeah, I
stages?
stopped counting, but somewhere over
Yeah,
5,000.
yeah. So I'm sure the first, 5 or 20 or even 50 were way different than after 100 or 1,000. So I feel like that's when you talk about realistic expectations, I think that's where we need to go with, and to allow ourselves to be on a journey. I wish that I recognized just like that simple wisdom of honoring, accepting just where we are, because we can't be where we ain't.
Well, I think people need all levels of expertise. And that's what I think people miss when they really suffer from imposter syndrome. And I tried to take this advice last week on one, gave it to myself on this AI stuff, because there's a lot of really smart people in the room. But sometimes with new stuff, you need a beginner's mind. You need someone
Absolutely.
who's learning this with you, who's maybe just a couple of weeks or a couple of pages ahead of you in the book. And sometimes people that have, like we are talking about all of our speaking and performing and stuff we've done it. If you've never done it, sometimes that's intimidating. You go, well,
It
yeah,
also
they
gives
say
you
it's
a
easy now.
but it
They've
gives
both
you a
done it hundreds
pass.
of
It's
times.
it's a blessing because it gives you a pass, Mike. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're a beginner, you can say, "Hey, look, I'm new at this. So can you explain that to me?" When you've already done it a lot, you don't feel like you can show that kind of vulnerability. So that's the good thing about being new, is that you
Yeah,
can
getting past that amateur phase to where once you get to professional, you get back to being comfortable saying, I don't know. It's hard. Stuff changes.
Yeah, but there's that middle part where you feel like you know enough that you shouldn't ask that quote unquote stupid question. But
Right.
when if you can adopt a beginner's mind and say, of course, I don't know very much yet. I've just only been doing this for a few months or a year, and everyone here has been 5 years into it. It's so much easier to say, hey, help me.
So I'm
You know what?
really
Maybe it's a male female thing. What do you think?
I don't think so. There's probably a little bit of tendencies, but it could be my male perspective. But I push back on all of that a lot because I always tell people, like, I'm a middle-aged white guy, middle class from the middle of the country. I check no boxes, and it's still hard for me. I still have imposter syndrome. I still feel like people are trying to keep me out of leadership and all these kind of things and stuff too. So, like, I think if we each saw each other in shoes, most of the barriers are in our own head, and stuff, but they may be reinforced a lot more for different
Yes.
things.
Yeah. So,
And
so
yeah.
I want to dive into this a little bit. So I feel like, when I work with somebody, I like to tease things out. So imposter syndrome would be, as I mentioned, like I had a client who was a consultant for a big energy company, very well paid. She felt like she was a fraud and that people were going to find her out. Everyone supported her, but as we talked about her life, she had a very different family relationship with her parents than you did. They
Mhm.
thought that no matter what she did, she would never be good enough. They even said, God punished us by giving you to us, even though she came home with perfect grades
Yeah.
every single
Horrible.
time. And so nothing she did was ever going to be good enough for her parents. And that's the priming that she brought into her life. I do believe that imposter syndrome, like the fear of speaking, is always tied to things from our past, always connected in some way. It may be very different for each person. When I hear you speaking about, it's almost like rejection.
Yeah.
So that may be a little different. Like, how do we deal with things like professional jealousy, or, like seeing other people who are further along and we want to be that way and we feel like we're not, or rejection? There are two things that come up. One is our own self-criticism and our own demand to be further along than we are, or to be different than we are. So that's the self-criticism, which is actually part of my framework. So if the first one is to clear and heal the past experiences that are getting triggered, number two is, how do we change what's going on between our ears? And in order to do that, we need to figure out, well, what is going on there? And what I love to do, and this I feel is really fun, even though it sounds like it could be torture, is how to watch yourself on video without cringing. Because when you watch yourself on video, there's nothing like that to bring up all the criticisms, right away. So easy for people to write down, a whole list of things that they don't like about how we look and sound and speak and blah, blah, blah. So that's a great way to learn part of or begin to get a sense of what's going on in our head that we may not even notice is being said, because we're so used to the things we say to ourselves. We just pass them by. It sounds normal. But if you said it out loud and you said it to someone else, like I had a client, Sumit, who was a COO of a tech startup, and he was like one of these guys who was always at the top of his class. For him, even A wasn't good enough. It was A with extra points. So for him to have to speak to his company, which he had to do every month, and he felt like he made a little mistake, and if he was to grade himself, it would have been a 96. That's failure for him. So when I said, well, okay, what are some of the things that go on in your head? Oh, you're not as good as that person. That person is a real natural. You're dumb and boring. You're dull and boring. And who do you think you are? And blah, blah, blah. And, he was just like saying this, yeah, this is what I think. And I said, listen to me, Sumit, you're dull and boring. Who do you think you are? I mean, all of a sudden it was like hearing that said to him from an outside source. It had a completely different impact than he realized he was having inside. But if you don't feel safe inside your own head, if you have a critic, a voice that is waiting to berate every perceived imperfection, then of course you're not going to feel at ease, whether it is, at ease speaking or at ease putting yourself out there or feeling your place, in your community or in your field. Like if you feel like you're getting rejected and you go there, yeah, nobody likes me. It's kind of like we have,
Yeah.
we need to learn how to be our staunchest allies and our biggest supporters. Because you know what, Mike, no one else is going to do it for us.
I love that for sure. And I like where you were going there. I think everybody has their own head trash, and it's a different story, even though it may manifest in the similar ways that I heard somebody else say this too. Like whatever your biggest fear is as a child becomes like sort of your superpower as an adult. And so mine was the rejection, need for approval, and fitting in. I was an August birthday, so I played sports with the people younger than me, and I had school with the people older than me, and I was kind of never in either group. I'm a nerd and a jock at the same time, and so I'm either the nerdiest athlete or the fittest nerd, depending on how you look at it. But I didn't feel like I belonged in either spot. And now I really feel passionate about communities and building stuff and marketing and making sure other people fit in and find their tribes and stuff like that now. So I think that's a really cool lesson and important for everybody to remember, is that those things can serve you too, but you do have to be aware of them and go find it out and do the work. All right, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about the other stuff that you did around play and movement and music and art. I think everybody also has their own play personality. You can take the quiz, playfulhumans.com/quiz. And I feel like no shame here, no judgments. However you find to play and find flow and move your body and enjoy creativity and express yourself, I think are amazing. And you have some interesting ways of doing that. So what do you feel like is the power of play since you've been doing this basically your whole career?
Well, I recently discovered while I was writing my book, the power of playing with our voices as we speak. And I have become so passionate about this because suddenly I realized, oh yeah, our voice is our speaking instrument, and we can learn to play it just like a musician plays. When you take, so that like one of my prompts in the Comfy on Camera module of my program is, I don't care what anybody thinks. So you can say it just like that, but you can also say, I don't care what anybody thinks. 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 And you can just go on, and you can say this in 100 different ways. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that amazing? So the idea of getting to play with not just the delivery, the expression, the emphasis, the timing, the tonality. So, there are a lot of people who speak like this, and there are people who speak like this. Now you have much more edge to your voice. And in fact, I was thinking before we got started, Mike, maybe I should try to match the tone of your voice more and speak with a little more edge, because that's not my native place, but it would be a good opportunity. And so I'm glad I had this little moment to do that, even though I have a mic here, which allows me to speak with more round resonance. So play with your voice. It is so much fun. Kids know how to do this, but after age 3 or 5 or 7, we forget. And it's time to reclaim the playfulness of your speaking voice.
I've done a lot of voice work too, and I find it fascinating. And yeah, I would just encourage everybody to play with it. I do think you have a natural voice, and sometimes people develop bad habits and stuff, but it's a learned skill. It can change, and you can find a voice for speaking. You can find a voice for playing. You can find a voice for, intimate conversations and have different voices. It's not like you always have to speak the same way. You did hit my one pet peeve though, which is the vocal fry.
Vocal fry.
Yeah.
I used to speak with vocal fry all the time. I had
really?
no idea I was doing it. Yeah.
It's great for like character work if you're doing voiceovers, but not so great for public speaking and videos where you're trying to listen to somebody or podcasts. All right. Are you ready to play a game?
Let's play.
Here we go. We're going to play Survey Says. Survey Says we surveyed 100 people. The top 5 answers are on the card. All you have to do is get 1 out of the top 5 in 2 out of 3 questions, and you win. Linda, We asked 100 people to name something you might do on a sunny day that you would never do on a rainy day. What do you think this said?
Sunbathe?
Number one answer, 34 points. That also includes going to the beach, going swimming, mowing the lawn, and taking the dog for a walk. Okay, question number two. Name something you might find on the bottom of a shoe.
Gum.
Number one answer, again, 58 points. The sole, dirt, dog poop, or a tack you might find on the bottom of your shoe. All right, you've already won. This one is just for funsies. Name something you might have to get down from your roof.
A basketball. A ball.
Yeah, there you go. Number one answer again. You nailed this game. All our toys, leaves, a cat or an animal, an antenna or satellite dish, and snow are our top 5 answers. Congratulations. You win. That means you win a free 30-second commercial for the book, Delight in the Limelight, Overcome Your Fear of Being Seen and Realize Your Dreams by Linda Ugelow. You can find it at lindaugelow.com or on Amazon. Linda, how can we help you or how can you help us?
If you have ever been afraid of speaking, whether it's on camera, on stage, in a meeting, in a conversation around the dinner table, and you would love to feel like it's more what you love to do rather than something you hate to do, this book is going to guide you from start to finish to go through that whole process of eliminating that anxiety and finding your delight in the limelight.
I love it. And Linda, you inspired me to play with my game show voice, if you didn't notice during the game. So thank you for challenging me, making me think today, and sharing some awesome stuff. I can tell you really know what you're talking about there, and I'm excited to check out the book as well. Delight in the Limelight, Linda Ugelow, thank you so much for being on here. And we have a Playful Humans book coming out soon as well. So it's right around the corner in the next month or two. Look for it on playfulhumans.com. Until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. Share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it, and we'll see you next time. Later.